Hi, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Boston Balling. I'm your host, as always, Gabby Hurlba, and I'm here with a very special guest tonight, Ray. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, yeah. We were just talking about this before we got on, just getting back into the swing of things after the holiday weekend and getting back into the flow of work and the daily routine.
Real life, right? The whole
Yeah,
real life thing.
yeah. Remembering that we have our responsibilities that we have to attend to.
Yeah, being an adult sucks. I tell my kids that all the time. Don't wish to grow up because it sucks.
Yeah, no, I definitely miss being a kid sometimes. I think back to my childhood times, and I'm like, wow, that was a really nice time in my life.
I concur.
Well, really happy to have you on the show tonight. I think everyone will be really excited to hear your opinion on a lot of things. But first, I want to start with just having you tell people about your sports background, how you got into being a big Patriots fan, and just sports fan in general.
Yeah, absolutely. I became a Patriots fan because I'm from Canada. For people who don't know me, I'm from Toronto. And back in the day when I started watching football in the early 90s, we didn't have like satellites and whack of channels. We got 2 games a week. We got a 1 o'clock game and we got a 4 o'clock game. And that was pretty much it. And then we got Monday Night Football. So either we would get a Buffalo Bills game or we get a New England Patriots game. We'd always kind of get the bordering cities. And to be honest with you, I liked the jerseys of the Patriots better than the Bills, and I became a Patriots fan as a little kid. And then just grew up loving them and got to experience the Tom Brady era. As for sportscasting, back in 2017, I started a YouTube page as a joke. I created a character named Donnie O'Donnell, and I made a list of everything that people say about Patriots fans and basically just acted this character, put on a terrible Boston accent, and just went nuts. And I guess somewhere in between, I started screwing up and actually started saying knowledgeable things, which I never was supposed to do. I made a video talking about why Tom Brady was the greatest of all time, and it went on something like, when you look at those piercing blue eyes, man, how can you tell me that Tom Brady's not the greatest? And then I actually started dropping that I had football knowledge, and I just started getting comments like, hey, dude, like, why don't you drop the stupid accent and just start talking about football instead of this stupid character? And I kind of blew up, man. My YouTube channel started going, and then I got recruited by a company called Sportscaster, and I've been working for them now for about a year and a half. It's an online sportscasting website. And then I know that you had my better half on, Connor, a couple weeks ago.
I did have Connor on, yeah.
I do need to clarify something. Connor came on with you and said that he started this podcast and found this guy, and now we do a show. I need to clarify that I discovered Connor on Twitter, and he was really funny. So I was like, hey, do you want to be a guest on my show that I had a contract for? And brought him on as a guest, and then went to my bosses at the company who recruited and found me and asked them if I could bring him on as a co-host. So I want to clarify that for all your viewers, as Connor tried to take credit for starting our show.
He did.
Yeah, well, I know he did. I watched it. I've already addressed it on our show, but for your viewers who don't watch ours, and I assume that's a lot, I discovered Connor. So I need to make that as clear as possible, because I produce the show, I do the research, I book the guest, I find the sponsors. Connor shows up, and then he tries to sit here like he's the mastermind of this whole empire that I've been building for the last 3 years. So I wanted to make that clear. No, so now we're on Sportscaster. We're still on YouTube and Facebook and that kind of thing. I write for Sportscaster as well. I write for our Facebook page, and we're starting to talk to a couple of other companies about getting on there to do some writing and some podcasting stuff as well.
That's awesome. Yeah, Connor and I definitely had a good conversation, but he said everything that you just mentioned. So I'm sure that people definitely hearing it now are finding this pretty amusing, because
Connor,
he did
sorry,
the opposite, that he just discovered you on Twitter and asked you to.
Oh yeah. Oh, I'm very aware of what he said, so that's why I had to come on here and set it straight. I'd also like to tell you too that I found out about it after he was on your show. This guy and I talk every single day about business. We talk about things, and I found out the day after he was on your podcast that he was going on the podcast. podcast. And I was like, dude, we could have promoted this. We could have done a whole bunch of things. I'm like, A, you cheated on me and didn't tell me. And then when I listened to it, Gabby, you're amazing, by the way. I've downloaded your podcast now. I'm a big fan. But when I heard him talking about the origins of our story, like he was the mastermind behind it, I was like, oh my God. I called him out publicly on Twitter and called him out publicly on our show for it.
I don't think I saw the Twitter post.
Oh yeah, it's there.
But I don't think I saw the tweet, so I'm gonna have to look back on it.
Yeah, you got it. So I just wanted to set your audience straight that don't listen to that Boston liar. Okay, he discovered nothing.
Okay, well, that's definitely good to know, and I'm definitely happy that you joined the show. You seem like a really cool and funny guy, especially after Connor came on and we had some Twitter exchanges, and so I was really excited to invite you on the show.
I'm excited, Yvonne. Listen, we're here talking about football. We get paid to talk about sports. Life is so serious. The last thing you can do is get serious about sports, right? And I know,
Exactly.
I know that you're involved in sports professionally, but you got to have fun. That's you have an awesome job. I have an awesome job. We get to talk about sports, man. People take it too serious. You got to have fun in life.
I totally agree with you. Like, too many people just try to take things too seriously. And sports are one of those things that people should go to get away from the serious things in life and just have fun.
Yeah, exactly.
I do have a new t-shirt on today, my Boston Balling shirt.
Look at that.
That I got for Christmas as a gift. Shout out to my sister, Alyssa, for that.
That's bomb.
She got me a Boston Balling t-shirt and long sleeve and short sleeve shirt for Christmas, Boston Balling shirts. So they are soon to be available for purchase. I'm in the process of working on that now too.
That's perfect.
So
you
that'll be fun.
rock Boston Balling. I'll do DPN. There we go.
You have the honor of being on my first episode with the attire.
I love it. And you're going to sell it?
I am. Yes. So
phenomenal.
Can look out for that. That's just a self promotion activity
Perfect.
that I plan on doing soon. So people can look out for that. But however, now that we are here on the show, I am really excited to talk to you about what is definitely a frustrating topic for us, which is our Patriots right now. I think that the main thing that I can take away from this season is there's just a lot of holes that need to be filled. And I think that there's certain positions that they need to focus on now. So the first question that I want to ask you that kind of prefaces everything else that I want to talk about is, what was your initial reaction when you found out Tom Brady was leaving? Because for me, it was just, first of all, not knowing what to say and feeling shocked because I didn't think he would actually pull the trigger and do it, but also at the same time, just super bummed.
Well, I've got kind of a funny story now about how I found out Tom Brady was leaving the team. It wasn't funny at the time. So, as we know, Tom Brady kind of left right at the beginning of this whole pesky COVID pandemic that we're dealing with. And I was sitting in my office watching a live telecast of our premier. And for those of you who don't know, the premier is like the equivalent of the governor of my province, which would be like my state here in Canada. And I was listening to him talk about how we were going into a full lockdown as of Friday. And everything was shutting down. And we were kind of sitting there going like, oh my God, like, how are we? And I was with one of my colleagues, and her and I were sitting there going, like, what's going to happen to us? Is my wife going to be working? So, like, we're starting to freak out. And just as that's happening, I looked down at my phone, and I'd gotten a text from somebody who said, check out Brady's Instagram. And I clicked on it, and it was him thanking the New England Patriots and saying that he was leaving. So
I remember that post.
Yeah, so I called my wife. And I was like, oh my God. And she thought I was calling to talk about the lockdown. Like this was not new to us, or this was brand new to us at the time.
Yeah.
We never had experienced this. And she's like, I know, I was just watching it. And I was like, no, forget the lockdown. I'm like, Tom Brady's leaving the Patriots. And she hung up on me. So
it's bigger news than anything else.
Yeah. So yeah, it's funny. It was something I saw coming and something I didn't see coming all at the same time on our show. So what people need to know about DPN commentary is we go out of our way to be overly optimistic. As we talked about, too many people are negative. So even when we're being negative about something, we're always trying to find the optimistic spin to it to try to be that, sort of voice of reason and talk people off the cliff. And on the show, I kept talking about, I don't see Tom Brady playing anywhere else. But like deep down, I kind of had that feeling that Tom Brady was leaving and then he left. And full disclosure, I'm very bitter. Like I'm bitter as hell towards Tom Brady. And I have no qualms about saying it. I've wished nothing but bad things for him this season. And I have no qualms about telling anybody. People are like, you're not loyal. I'm like, no, I am loyal because the names on the front mean more to me than the names on the back. And, 2 years ago or 3 years ago, we were joking around Christmas time. And I told people that the only person I'd ever have an affair with is Tom Brady. Otherwise, I'm loyal to my wife. Now he's a turncoat and I want nothing to do with Tom Brady. So.
It's funny that you say that because I do know people that feel the same way. Like some of my guy friends that are Patriots fans were like, Tom Brady is my guy. If I could have an affair with anybody other than my girlfriend or whoever, it would definitely be Tom Brady. So I think the tables have turned on that now because he's not with New England anymore. And unfortunately, it's starting to really show that he really is the GOAT because, he led the Bucks to the playoffs. It's their first playoffs in a long time since 2007. So that's a pretty big accomplishment for him over there. So I guess if there should be a congratulations issued, then I guess now would be the time to do it. But
no, I will tell you this. And and this is definitely my bitterness speaking, so nobody take this serious. Take this as my bitterness speaking, but like I feel like I could have led the Bucks to a playoff if you would have given me Gronkowski and Antonio Brown to add on to that roster that they already had. To me, I'm going to be honest with you. This Bucks team isn't very good. And I know that people, and this isn't my bitterness speaking. This is actually my analytical brain speaking. Like that game that I watched against Detroit on Saturday that had everybody on Twitter like having orgasms.
Crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, man, you're playing the Detroit Lions defense that started the year bad and just got worse as it went along. Yeah. And it's funny. So I work for Sportscaster. I have my podcast, but I also work on their news channel, their news segments with other guys. And I asked them, and these are non-Patriot fans, so they're not biased or bitter towards Brady like I am. And I said, did you guys walk away from that game feeling any different about this Bucks team? And they're both like, no. They're a volatile team that can be. They can look like they looked against Detroit, or they can look like they did against the Giants, right? And to me, this is a team that should already be at 12. They should have won the division. They should have been at 12 wins. You got the talent to do it. Congratulations, Brady. You brought him to the playoffs. You did something Jameis couldn't do. Maybe if Jameis would have got his eye surgery before last season, Brady wouldn't have been in Tampa. Maybe he would have been in the AFC. I also want to point out, too, that I truly believe that if the Patriots were in the NFC, they'd be in the playoffs right now because that's how weak the NFC conference really is. And Brady got to beat up on some of those NFC teams. Yeah, they're also 1-4 against playoff teams.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. I think that if the Patriots were in the NFC right now, they'd be a playoff team. I think that there was a lot of inconsistency this year. That was an issue, and the inconsistency doesn't fly when you're playing teams in the AFC that are as competitive as they are right now. I definitely agree with that. And when you reference the Bucks and Tom Brady, I don't think that the Bucks are a serious threat when it comes to the postseason. I don't think that they're going to go to the Super Bowl or anything like that. I think that they are a team that has, on paper, a lot of weapons offensively, but I don't think that they have what it takes to go all the way. And I think they're going to face some teams that are going to give them a lot of trouble in the playoffs this year. I mean, am I happy for Brady? I don't know if I go as far as saying happy. But I think that it shows, how good of a system he was in before and how good of coaching he had before, that he can go somewhere else and apply the skills that he learned when he was in New England to another team. But there's always going to be that hole there. And being a New England Patriots fan is truly not going to be the same without Tom Brady. But, it is what it is, I guess. I wish him the best of luck in the last however maybe 2, maybe 3 years that he has left in his career, realistically. So we'll see what happens there. But in terms of the Patriots and their quarterback situation, Cam was just really, really frustrating to watch this year. And I think there were a lot of fans that were trying to defend him at the beginning of the year because of, everything that happened, the circumstances. The Patriots had the most COVID opt-outs of any team this year. They had a lot of injuries. He got COVID himself, and the facilities shut down. And there were all these excuses that were made at the beginning of the season. And I think people were holding out hope that Cam was going to play better and start performing better after that. But that really didn't happen. He never really showed any signs of consistently being better, and there were glimpses that maybe he would be, and there were glimpses that he would give us hope that maybe things would improve and he would start to turn things around, but then he would just disappoint again. So in terms of the quarterback situation, I mean, there are options out there. You have Dwayne Haskins, who was just recently released. I mean, Matthew Stafford's going to be a free agent. I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo, who's iffy because of injuries, but then the draft, there could be some decent quarterbacks that fall by the time the Patriots draft. So in terms of the quarterback situation, I mean, for me personally, Stidham is not the answer, and neither is Cam. So what do you think is the best option going forward to address the quarterback position?
So I defended Cam Newton last night. I'm one of those Cam Newton defenders, and I will defend him until this season's over. Is he the right quarterback for the Patriots? I have taken the stance of I don't know. And I don't think we know much about what this Patriots team is. You talk about the glimpses. Let me tell you about the glimpses. The glimpses came out in weeks 1, 2, and 3 when he had a fully healthy roster. Then it fell off. Then COVID hit. And so I gave him a couple weeks that the Denver game, the San Francisco game, there was definitely something wrong with him.
Yeah.
Then Jules goes out. And then we saw the glimpses. When did we see the glimpses? When Jacoby Myers became the go-to. Well, exactly. Guess what happened? Yeah, but guess what happened? Defenses started taking Jacoby Myers away, right? Yeah. They realized that's his only outlet. The pass that Damiere Byrd dropped last night was just the absolute epitome of what this Patriots season was. And I tweeted out immediately after that, I can't wait to hear people make that Cam Newton's fault. You know what I mean? That the ball hit Damiere Byrd in the head 50 yards down the field. I don't believe, to me, there's two things. A, Cam had some issues this year. Mechanically, footwork, decision-making. I mean, I know that everybody's going to point to him throwing at N'Keal Harry's ankles last night. That was really his only bad throw last night, but he only threw the ball 10 times. Number two, there was a play calling issues this year. I've never been more disappointed in Josh McDaniels than I was this season, and I don't think they tried to turn Cam Newton into Tom Brady so badly, and that wasn't working. And one thing that the Patriots have always done well is put players in the position to succeed. This is Josh McDaniels who worked with Tim Tebow, where he had to change an entire offense to get him going. That being said, I do think there's better options than Cam Newton out there. It ain't Jarrett Stidham, that's for sure. I've never
not Brian Hoyer either.
Oh, Brian Hoyer! Don't get me started on Brian Hoyer. To me, Brian Hoyer ruined our season. So don't even. But I think one of the biggest problems with Patriot fans, and I say this publicly all the time, that I hate Patriots fans. I say it all the time. When people are like, what fan base do you hate the most? I'm like, Patriots fans. And they're like, but you're a Patriots fan. I'm like, I know. That's why I'm allowed to say it. I said, it's, we hope for failure. You know what I mean? And you see it among, not everybody, but you look in our fan base, like, people can't wait for Cam Newton to fail. And I started, for the first time in my life, couldn't wait for Jarrett Stidham to fail, to show everybody that Jarrett Stidham isn't the answer. The whole Stidham season. We're acting like Bill Belichick doesn't know how to assess a quarterback unless he plays in a game. Trust me, Bill Belichick knows what he has in Jarrett Stidham right now, just like he knew what he had in Tom Brady prior to him taking over for Bledsoe. Anybody who's read The Dynasty would have learned that he actually wanted to go with Brady to start the 2001 season, but knew he couldn't because Kraft just gave Bledsoe a huge contract. He knows what he has in Stidham. Dwayne Haskins is not the answer. My God, Dwayne Haskins is not the answer. And look, I'm an OSU fan. I'm an Ohio State boy. I love Ohio State. In 2017, I was asked, hey, what do you think of Dwayne Haskins? And I said, number one, his game will never translate to the NFL. Number two, he's not a good dude. He's not a good person. He wasn't a good person in Ohio. It's why I never understood how he worked with Urban Myers. And I said he's gonna have a crappy career. I'm also going on the record right now. I don't care how hot this take is. Now this guy's a good person, but when it comes to his game translating, Justin Fields isn't gonna turn over to the NFL either. Ohio State is built on running and defense, not on quarterback play. And I don't know why he's going to be drafted so high, but I'm going to stop right there on that. I don't want to trash Ohio State too much. That being said,
It's okay.
I have been a Matthew Stafford guy since the day he was drafted.
Yeah, I'm all for this, so I want to hear what you have to say about Matthew Stafford because I'm high on him too. So keep going.
He's a top 10 quarterback who happens to play for the Detroit Lions. I say that all the time. Back in 2010, I was working at a prison. I was on a night shift, and I was with my fellow guard, and we were chatting. I said, "You know what I'd love to see the Patriots do? Trade Tom Brady for Matthew Stafford." I said, Tom Brady's better than Matthew Stafford, but we can have a top 10 quarterback. And this is when Stafford's young. I said, but we'll have a top 5, top 10 quarterback for the next 15 years. Now, at this point, I didn't realize Brady was going to play till he was 75. But I made that thing. I'm a big, big fan of Matthew Stafford. I think that he could come into this system. He could play well. We'll have to see what happens with Josh McDaniels and whether or not he's hanging around on this team. And how they fit. But Stafford's also a little bit more mobile than Tom Brady was. But Gabby, I'm going to be honest with you. Unless they get him some valuable receivers on that team and get something out of the tight ends, they might as well hire me to play quarterback because I'll probably get just as much production as anybody else. That being said, love Stafford. Wouldn't mind seeing Jimmy G come back. I've always been a Jimmy G guy. My love affair with Tom Brady actually probably started separating in 2017 when they traded away Jimmy Garoppolo, when the whole story came out
that whole situation was bad.
Yeah, that he went to Kraft, and then I'm kind of sitting here now going like, well, 2 years later you left us and you tried to leave us after that season. When you read the dynasty, so I wouldn't mind seeing Jimmy G get another shot at it. There's another name out there that's kind of that hasn't really been floated around, but we discussed a little bit. Alex Smith is a guy I wouldn't mind seeing in New England. I don't want the Patriots to draft a quarterback to start next season because I believe that this team is really a year away from having to do a full rebuild. I think that or maybe 2 years, I think you take the players you have, those veterans you have, plus the guys you got, you have like $51 million in cap space, go out, draft for the defense. I want them to draft nothing but defensive players in the draft this year unless they're taking, oh my God, the tight end.
They needed to draft a tight end is what I was just going to say. I think that it would be worth drafting a tight end because that's a position that is really, really hurting right now. And I think that it's beneficial for them to do that.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. There's a guy I want them to draft in the first round. He's more of like a DK Metcalf receiver than he is a tight end. Oh, Pitt? Is that his name? My God, I can't remember. What's that?
Are you talking about the Kyle Pitts, the guy that
Kyle Pitts.
Yes. I tweeted about last night.
Yes, you did. Connor and I did an entire show on Kyle Pitts about a week ago, and just how I've loved watching his game. I did a lot of research on him. I actually want them to draft him though and convert him to receiver because I think he could be DK Metcalf, and then I don't have to hear we could have had DK
with Pitts too in the comments here.
Pardon me.
I just speaking of Connor, he just piped in with Pitts here in the comments too. So that's pretty funny that we're bringing that up now. Connor. I just saw him post in the comments about Pitts, so he's on the same page as us.
Yeah, that's my Connor.
Yes, you're
the guy who discovered me. Yeah,
he posted Pitts in the comments, so I think he's on the same page as us with that. But keep going. I thought I would mention that he piped in with that. But yeah, I think that he would be beneficial for them to draft early.
Absolutely. So that's probably the only offensive player I want them to draft is Kyle Pitts. Even if they convert him to receiver, I think you could keep Asiasi as your inline tight end and use him as a blocker and have Pitts as like your H-back and outside guy who can run the football or can run out and make catches. And he'll be our DK, and then I don't have to hear we could have had DK anymore. On top of that, I want them to draft all defensive players. I want them to address the offense in free agency. Corey Davis, I'm a fanboy of, and like I will literally buy a jersey the day he signs with the team. I've already said I've already went on Snapface and told Bill Belichick you have to bring in Corey Davis or we're not going to be cool anymore. But I want them to address that. You know, that's the big guy. I don't think we're going to get into those top guys like a Juju or an Allen Robinson, and I wouldn't want them to. Patriot fans keep calling Bill Belichick cheap. I'm like, no, Bill Belichick doesn't want to have 25% of his salary cap on one player. But if you can go in and get a guy like a Corey Davis, you can draft like a Pitts, you can have Jacoby Myers, who I think is a great number 2. The problem is he's playing as a number 1 right now, and then you could possibly bring in like a buddy from Detroit there. I'm really bad with names, I apologize. But the wide receiver from Detroit who's going to be a free agent after this year, Marvin, I think, or something like that.
Yeah.
You guys know. Then you got a good triple threat there. Plus, you can have Pitts to be the 4. That's what I want to see. If they don't do that, they might as well sign me to be quarterback because I'll be just as productive no matter who they put back there. If Tom Brady was the quarterback this year, all my bitterness aside, and be all honest, if Tom Brady was the quarterback of the Patriots this year, I believe the Patriots would be 6-10. Like they'd be.
I was going to ask you that question even too. If they had Brady this year, would they be in the playoffs or not? Because this is a good question because, obviously Twitter was going wild last night, and even today there were these memes going off today about how Brady led the Bucs to their first playoffs since 2007, and Belichick and the Patriots missed the playoffs for the first time since 2008. So the memes were going around like obviously Belichick needs Brady. So my question was, do you think that if they had Brady this year as their quarterback, that things would be different and they would be in the postseason?
No, and you can't make the comparison, and that's
exactly.
That's where I get frustrated, right? And you can take any narrative. Look, I could go on Player Profile and PFF and pick out every negative analytic about Tom Brady, which I did this year, and compared him to Cam Newton, and I picked out some pretty staggering numbers, and I used analytics to prove why Cam Newton was having a better statistical year than Tom Brady outside of traditional stats. Because you can do it. You can use stats any way you want to change a narrative. But the comparison this year to Brady not being on the Patriots or being on the Bucs, okay, you're comparing Jacoby Myers to Mike Evans and Chris Godwin and Antonio Brown and Rob Gronkowski, and you had O.J. Howard for a while. You have a running game. You have one of the best offensive lines in the league, and you have a defense that's like a top 5 defense. Like everything you want. If Bill Belichick was coaching that Bucs team with Tom Brady, they'd be 15-0 right now. Bruce Arians has probably lost games for them.
Yeah.
So, the comparison's just not there.
Yeah, you can't really just say that if Brady was with the Patriots this year that things would be different, they'd be in the postseason, or if Belichick was coaching the Bucs. It's hard to really say, but I do agree with you that Bruce Arians has not helped the Bucs really in Tom Brady's game this year. So I think that their record would be a lot better if they did have Belichick coaching that team and everything he has to work with there. But yeah, it's definitely an interesting thing. But I don't agree with the people who keep saying Belichick can't coach a playoff team unless he has Brady. I don't necessarily think that that's true. I think that there's just pieces missing right now that need to be kind of, filled in gaps that they need to fill before they can talk about being playoff contenders. But I think that they can do it. I don't think that they necessarily need to have Brady to do that. I think it just is a matter of all the pieces that go into that. And I think if they had more offensive weapons this year, then they could have been a playoff team. I mean, they were close for a while, and then they had some bad losses in there that you had to throw in. But I mean, there's a lot of circumstances to play around with that. But I did have a question from the crowd here that kind of has to do with the offensive weapons and just their offense in general. But what are your thoughts on N'Keal Harry? Do you think that he's just underperforming and needs more time, or do you think that he's somebody that they should consider cutting? Because for me, I've had a lot of mixed feelings on him this year, and it's really disappointing to watch him because there were so many expectations for him, and he's supposed to be performing a lot better than he has been this year. And he's just been a disappointment when he's somebody that could have been a really, really crucial part of that offense. So, what are your thoughts on him? Do you want to see him develop more and see him get more playing time, or do you think he's somebody that they need to just drop?
Okay. There's a lot about N'Keal Harry. Number one, I think expectations were way too high on N'Keal Harry. And I was one of the people pushing the N'Keal Harry narrative. You know, Bill Belichick took a receiver in the first round. Well, he took him 32nd overall. It's not like he was a top 10 pick. Like he was basically a
Yeah.
second round pick. Because if he was picked one pick later, he would have been a second round pick and not a first round pick, and perhaps expectations would have been dropped. That being said, N'Keal Harry did not take the steps this year that I think all of us were hoping for. It was brutal. He actually he took brutal steps this year, and he had Cam Newton who wanted to work with him, and that's where my piece comes in. Tom Brady, regardless of what Cam Newton's running back or wide receiver coach talking about the switch from Brady to Newton, Brady didn't want to throw to Cam Newton. We know that. I mean, Brady made it clear that he didn't feel it was his job to get rookies NFL ready, and N'Keal Harry wasn't NFL ready when he came in last year.
Yeah.
He's played 16 games now or 17 games. He hasn't shown me that he's got a spot on this team in the top 4 on the rotation. That being said, his touchdown was it 2 weeks ago when he turned around and caught it in the end zone and used his strength. He caught a couple of 50-50 balls. That's the N'Keal Harry that I've been waiting for. He's not going to be DK Metcalf. So I'm sick of hearing we could have had DK. You know what? Everybody could have had Tom Brady too. So enough, right? And someone did the math the other day on Twitter, and there was like 230 prospects since 2000 that the Patriots could have drafted. And every single team could have drafted DK Metcalf. 7 wide receivers were drafted ahead of DK Metcalf.
I was waiting for his name to be called.
Yeah. So with that being said, N'Keal Harry could have a role on this team in that sort of area as the 5th receiver, possibly the 6th. I mean, if it came down to, do you want N'Keal Harry or Gunnar Olszewski to be a receiver? I'm gonna go with N'Keal Harry over Gunnar. But in a situation where he was really the number 3, you know, behind Bird and Jacoby Myers, that just didn't work this season. He needs to be like a number 5 situational receiver.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that that's a good way to look at it. I think that he was definitely not somebody that was supposed to be one of the top receivers in the league when he came in. But I do think that him being present, there needs to be more production from him than there is now. And I'm not ready to just write him off right now altogether, but I don't think that I'm extremely high on him at the moment. And I'm hoping that if he can, you know, blossom more and show the N'Keal Harry we just saw it, particularly in that touchdown that you referenced. And even there were a couple other moments this year that he showed that N'Keal Harry. If he can show that N'Keal Harry, then obviously that shows that he's worth it. But there needs to be more that he can do, and not, you know, with all these drop passes and everything, he can't be doing that kind of stuff if he wants to get far in this Patriots system. And I think that more time needs to be given to see what he can really do. But I don't think that Cam Newton helped his case really either. And I know that you said you defend Cam, but I think that there's a lot of situations where Cam doesn't really set up his offense to be put in a good position. And the thing about Tom Brady that made him special was that he made everybody around him good, and he found a way to involve everybody in the offense. And that's something that he had that was unique about him. And I feel like with Cam, he had trouble really understanding his offense. And I was hoping that would come with time, and it usually does. I mean, it's hard going into a new system. And granted, this year it was obviously even harder to go into a new system and learn everything because of, you know, the pandemic and everything that came with the Patriots and all the circumstances, and Cam himself getting COVID. It's hard to come into a new system and be able to develop chemistry with your offense. But I feel like Cam has a lot more trouble being able to read his offense than Brady ever did. And I think that somebody like N'Keal Harry, I think, could really blossom if he's put in the right position to do that. And so I think that he needs some more time and maybe a new quarterback that can set him up and other players on the offense to do that. And when it comes to Cam, I think that there needs to be some serious thinking around that, because obviously Belichick hasn't budged in terms of the whole Cam is our starting quarterback thing. He hasn't ever said anything differently from that. And, we know that Belichick's a pretty quiet guy and he never really expresses much of anything in his press conferences. But he's a hard guy to read when it comes to the Cam situation, because there's no way that he wants their record and the way that their season turned out to be like this again next year. And I really don't think that he had this in mind going into this year either. And I think he thought that they were going to perform a lot better. So the question becomes, does he really think it's worth building a team around Cam and catering to Cam's strengths? And if they do that, then they can't be trying to, like you said before, turn Cam into Tom Brady, because he's not, and his playing style is different. And he also runs a lot more than Tom Brady ever ran too. Like he's more of a running guy, but somehow manages to, mess that up sometimes too. But the question becomes, do they feel like Cam is worth investing in and building a team around him going forward, or not? Because something needs to change, and there's some sort of something going on in terms of a lack of chemistry between Cam and the offense, and things cannot stay the way that they are now, or else we're just going to be looking at similar frustrations next year.
Yeah, and there's a lot to digest there. And I think what I want to point out is everything you said about Tom Brady, I can counterpoint to you, right? And I think what we do is a lot of times that we look at what we want to look at with rose-colored glasses, and we look at others. When did the Patriots offense really become the key point of New England? Because it wasn't their first 3 Super Bowls. You know what I mean? Their first 3 Super Bowls, it was all about Teddy Bruschi, Richard Seymour, Willie McGinnis, Rodney Harrison, Lawyer Malloy. It was that just smothering defense that, they were probably the best defense in the league. I would probably
really helped,
Yeah. So I would probably say around 2007 is that the offense became the focal point. I'll throw out there that was the season that they brought in Randy Moss, who's a Hall of Famer, and they brought in Wes Welker. We talk about how Brady makes people better. Last year made me, and this is pre-bitter Tom Brady, last year made me question that. And I'll tell you why. Because I watched Julian Edelman, who didn't look like the Julian Edelman of years past. I know people say he's banged up and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. But there was something different about him last year. What was missing in New England last year?
Yeah.
87. 87 was missing last year.
Yeah, I mean, not having Gronk, that was another thing I was going to address later, but not having Gronk was a blatant hole in the offense last year, and it was clear that it became clear the more games that he wasn't there for, and the more that we saw him not on the team and not involved in the offense, it became more and more clear how much Brady really relied on Gronk when he was actually there.
It was, and this brings me back to my whole N'Keal Harry point, because we talk about Brady making people better, but if we look at his top receivers over the years, it's been Randy Moss, it's been Wes Welker, who Belichick gave up a second-round draft pick for. So it's not like he just found this guy on the street. He knew that, Miami wanted a second for him.
Yeah.
Julian Edelman and Rob Gronkowski have been his top 4 receivers throughout his career. You know what I mean? And then Deion Branch, who was a Super Bowl MVP.
Yeah.
One guy's already a Hall of Famer. One guy's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. One guy's not going to be a Hall of Famer. One of them could be Wes Welker, could be a Hall of Famer. He's got the numbers, and Julian Edelman won't be a Hall of Famer because his numbers come more in the playoffs than the regular season. So we talk about Brady making people better, and he does. This isn't me knocking Tom Brady. I know it's sacrilegious to say anything bad about Tom Brady. I apologize. Everybody relax. Have a beer. You'll be okay. But last season, Tom Brady didn't elevate the offense. He didn't elevate Josh Gordon. He didn't elevate Jacoby Myers. He didn't, because Jacoby Myers had the same season he did with Cam Newton this year. He didn't elevate Philip Dorsett. He didn't elevate Ryan Izzo. He didn't elevate Ben Watson. He didn't elevate anybody last year. He had a good game with Antonio Brown. Besides that, the Patriots defense carried them through the whole season. So it's amazing, though. This is where I start looking at the N'Keal Harry thing. It's Cam Newton's fault that N'Keal Harry didn't take a step this year. And I know that's not what you're saying, but it's what a lot of other people are saying, right? It's Cam Newton's fault that N'Keal Harry didn't take the step last year, but it's the receiver's fault that Tom Brady didn't have a good offensive year last year. And you see where the argument starts, where it's like, well, you're actually contradicting, like, and I know it's not you, but this is just, I can foresee arguments ahead of me, and I can see what people are going to say in your comments. But you see where the contradiction starts to come in, right? Well, if Tom Brady makes people better, N'Keal Harry should have been a superstar last year, but he wasn't. Cam Newton didn't make it better. Was he hindered by Brady and Newton? Yes. Should he have done more? A lot more with what he was given, especially at the beginning of the season when he was being targeted and dropping the football. He got played out of the game plan. If you look at it, he got played out of the game plan, very much like Ryan Izzo got played out of the game plan because he was getting targeted at the beginning of the season too. But when you keep dropping passes, the quarterback's going to stop throwing you the football.
Yeah.
And again, no. I had to beat up Brady a little bit to get to this point, just to show that, yes, Brady elevates people, but those receivers also have to do something themselves. And N'Keal Harry hasn't done enough with Brady or Newton for me to go and be like, and look, I've been defending Cam Newton up until N'Keal Harry up until 3 weeks ago when I finally put my hands in the air and said, kid, I can't do it anymore. You have to start showing people, because I'm starting to sound stupid now.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I do think that it's obviously not all on the quarterback, and I think that they need to do something themselves. And N'Keal Harry hasn't shown that he can really be a valuable part of this offense. I think that there's a lot more that he needs to do to show that he can really contribute in a positive way. And the thing with Tom Brady is I really think that he started to get super frustrated with the team last year, and I think he was kind of on his last straw once Gronk announced his retirement. I think that Brady kind of was just over the whole thing in New England and just saying, I can't do this anymore, because it's no coincidence that he goes to Tampa and Gronk joins him there. I think that once Gronk left, I think he kind of was over everything, because we already know that his relationship with Belichick was rocky. So there's all of that, and I think that was a factor, and I think he just didn't really have as much of a motivation to want to really succeed with that team as much as he had before, because I think that he knew that Gronk was a valuable asset to his offense, and if he didn't have him, and he didn't, like you said before, he didn't trust a lot of the younger guys that hadn't blossomed yet to really do much. So he was like, well, what do I have to work with here? So what's the point of me really staying here anyway? So I think that when it comes to last year, I mean, they barely made the playoffs last year, and then they got caught in the first round. They lost to the Titans, and people kept. I remember people were joking, "Oh, Tom Brady's last career pass ever is an interception," and I was like, "Well, he's not going to retire. We all know that. He's not going to end on that." But I really had a really, really good feeling he wasn't going to stay in New England, and I think that he knew, because of what he had surrounding him, that he wasn't going to be able to get anywhere going forward with that. I think that he knew that he needed leverage, and he needed something better than that in terms of his offense. And I think that if Drew Brees had retired, he might have thought about going to New Orleans. I think that would have been more of a choice for him, but then that didn't happen. And so when it comes to Tampa, I think he might have thought the situation there would have panned out better. And then Gronk agreed to come, and he got AB to go there. So I think that it seemed for him like things were working out there. But I really think that Gronk retiring was kind of the tipping point for Tom when it came to New England.
Yeah, and I mean, look, it's no coincidence that his career is moving on. He went to the best offense in the NFL. And I again, and this is where I start to make the argument, is Tom Brady elevating Mike Evans and Chris Godwin? Because their numbers look pretty similar to last year. They might even be less, because, you know what I mean? The way that Jameis Winston, away from having like 150 interceptions, had over 5,000 yards last year, 30 touchdowns or whatever he threw. I think that it's, when you look at it, we talk about that elevation piece. I think that my issue with Tom, no, not with Tom Brady. I don't have an issue with Tom Brady. My issue with when we talk about Tom Brady is we dismiss a lot of good players and basically say it's all because of Tom Brady, right? And so when I hear that, well, Tom Brady elevated everybody around him, I'm like, what happened last season? And I know you said he checked out, but I'm like, he elevated nobody last year, right? Is he elevating Mike Godwin and Chris Evans, or Chris Godwin and Mike Evans this year? Probably not. They're playing exactly the way they played for the last. They've been pro Bowlers and All Pros for the last 2 seasons. They're continuing to play like Pro Bowlers and All Pros, and it's not a knock on Brady. Brady's the GOAT. Why is Tom Brady the best? Because winners win, and that's what I say. The best win. And if it comes down to a final drive of a game, I want that in Tom Brady's hand, because he's going to throw a pass. He's going to complete the pass. He's not going to choke under pressure. He's not going to panic being down by 14 in the fourth quarter of a divisional playoff game against the Ravens. He's going to lead the team down the field, and he's going to go. But when we look at these moments, we all think, oh, it's Tom Brady, Tom Brady, Tom Brady. It's all Tom Brady. Julian Edelman threw a double pass to Julian Edelman. Yeah. You know what I mean? To spark that game. Malcolm Butler intercepted Russell Wilson at the goal line. Julian Edelman made one of the most phenomenal Super Bowl catches in the world. If Dante Hightower doesn't strip sack Matt Ryan, the comeback isn't even possible. If Trey Flowers doesn't sack Matt Ryan, it's not possible. If they don't take a stupid holding call on Chris Long, who Matt Patricia said, come to the outside because he's going to hold you, and then told the ref, watch the guard, he's going to hold him. They kick a field goal and that game's over, and the greatest comeback of all time never happens. And I don't have a beef with Tom. Well, I do. I'm bitter towards Tom Brady, as you know, but this is me taking my bitterness out. I get frustrated at times, though, because people like to dismiss every other player, great player, that the Patriots have had, just to say that Tom Brady did everything. And again, it starts with an argument. It starts with a question about N'Keal Harry, and we get to hear. And it's always the way it goes, whether I'm talking to you, talking to Connor, talking to Sarah, talking to whoever. It starts with, hey, Ray, what do you think they should do with N'Keal Harry? And then we get into Tom Brady's the greatest of all time, and the Patriots wouldn't won a game the last 20 years, right? And then it's me going, well, hold on. Like, he's played with bona fide Hall of Famers. He didn't make Randy Moss a Hall of Famer. He probably didn't make Gronk a Hall of Famer. Those are two guys that would have went to the Hall of Fame irregardless, right? Is Patrick Mahomes making Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill better? No. Tyreek Hill is probably the best receiver in the league right now, and Travis Kelce is arguably the best tight end in the league right now. And if he could block better, and he blocks. Kansas City Chiefs fans, relax. He blocks. I know he blocks, but he doesn't block like Gronk. If he could block like Gronk, though, then he'd be the greatest tight end ever, too, because he's going to surpass everything Gronkowski ever did in his career offensively. But it's not Patrick Mahomes who makes them that good. They just now have a good quarterback throwing to them, right? And Patrick Mahomes is great, too. Don't get me wrong. He's the best quarterback in the NFL. But you get what I'm saying, right? It's funny how Brady elevated everybody else, but Tyreek and Kelce make Patrick Mahomes better, right? And I think as football, and that's where as a football fan, I try to keep that sort of even keel of like, let's look at this sensibly. Tom Brady didn't throw the ball and catch the ball himself. People had to catch those footballs that he threw. Even if they're perfect balls, you have to catch them.
Yeah, no, I definitely see what you're saying with that. And I think that there's a lot that can go into the discussion when it comes to the Patriots and Tom Brady, and if it's really a factor of not having Tom, and if that's what they need, and if they are just the quarterback lacking is because of Tom or not. I think that's a debate that we could have for a long time. But at the end of the day, I think that the Patriots need to just realize that there's a lot of holes that need to be filled, and they need to start rebuilding the team in a way that's not catering to the Tom Brady's playing style, because that's not what they have now. And there's so many quarterbacks now that are very, very different from the way that Tom Brady played. And I think that if they can kind of refocus this rebuild in a way that doesn't try to turn other quarterbacks into Tom Brady, then I think that that's what they need to do. But again, it comes with the position players, and the defense is just inconsistent. So I think that they need to just start drafting defensive players and kind of start from scratch there too, because the defense had games this year where they seemed like, the Patriots defense that we've all seen in the past, but then they would have games where they are not that at all. So it's just, it's frustrating. And I think that the defense needs to be seriously addressed, but the priorities really need to be also on the quarterback position and a reliable tight end, and even the receiving core. I think they need to evaluate that too. So I think there's a lot of things that need to go into this offseason. I think there's going to be a lot of pressure on Belichick to see how he utilizes this offseason if they want to be contenders again next year, because the Bills are only getting better, and there's more and more chemistry developing with them. And, Josh Allen had a pretty great year this year too. And so the Bills are going to be a team to be reckoned with too. So if they want to be contenders again, they need to really, and I mean, Miami is there, but who knows what they're realistically going to do. It's really hard to say right now, but at the end of the day, if Patriots want to be competitive again next year, a lot needs to change that they don't have right now.
No, it's true. Outside, well, no, running back as well. They have to address all of their skilled positions, considering James
Yeah.
White and Rex Burkhead are going to be free agents this year. The offensive line, Joe Tooney and David Andrews are going to be free agents again. Those are huge pieces to that interior line. I mean, there's a lot we can talk about this team. They got to start looking at a left tackle. Isaiah Wynn can't stay on the field for a whole season. They got to start addressing something more reasonable on that left side. Inside linebacker on defense is huge. I'll point out that the Patriots, when they lost like Super Bowl 52 to the Philadelphia Eagles, missing Dante Hightower. Suddenly he comes back in 2018. Defense is stellar again. They're stellar last year. He opts out. He's gone. He's such a big piece to this team. He's like the Tom Brady of the defense, like of what he brings to the middle of the field. Yeah, there's a lot of positions. They need to address defensive tackle. They need to address inside linebacker. There's rumors Hightower's going to retire. It's going to break my heart. He's my all-time favorite Patriot.
Today if he does.
Yeah, they got to address that. Juwan Bentley's not the answer. Josh Uche showed last night he's definitely not the answer at inside linebacker. He's an outside linebacker. I never want to see him play inside ever again. Terez Hall can throw a booming hit, but that's basically it. He's awful in coverage. He's awful in other areas. And then they have to address every skill position on the offense, from the quarterback to the receiver to the tight end. I mean, hell, Gabby, if you're available, I'm sure they might give you a shot, because you would be an upgrade over what they're putting on the field right now. Outside of Jacoby Myers, I'm going to show my love to Jacoby Myers because he's done well. And I want to give a big shout out to my boy Sony Michel last night, too, who's another guy that I've been fighting for.
Yeah.
I think that guy's not getting enough love. People just have this hate relationship with Sony Michel. And I'm like, look, every time the guy runs the ball, he does well. He runs it like 6 times. It's not his fault he's not getting opportunities.
No, I like Tony Michel a lot. I think he's a really talented guy, and I think he's somebody that doesn't get enough credit either. And I think that he's going to have a really good career, I think, too, going forward. And I think that he's somebody that people need to just not write off when it comes to talking about the Patriots offense and just saying, oh, everybody's bad, because that's not the case. You know what I mean? And I totally agree with you. I think that there's a lot of things that need to be addressed, and I think that it's going to be interesting to see how he utilizes his draft picks and free agency, because there's going to be a lot of valuable free agents that they could consider. And with the Matthew Stafford thing, I think that that's definitely somebody that I would be high on. Jimmy Garoppolo, with his injury history, worries me. But, I mean, again, he already knows the Patriots system, and he has a relationship with Bill Belichick, who wanted to keep him at that point. So that could be promising. But I think that there is some options, but they need to do something they're not doing, and I really don't see Cam as being part of that picture when it comes to long term. And as sad as that is, I mean, I like Cam as a person. I don't think he's a bad guy, but I don't think that they can be contenders if they still have Cam at the quarterback position, because he doesn't know how to be clutch in situations where he has to be clutch. And when it comes to relying on him to make a play, he can't do that and in crunch time. So that kind of worries me, and I think that he's not a long-term solution. But I think at the end of the day, I mean, I have to trust Belichick in what he's doing in his process. So whatever he decides, I'll support that.
I think, too, just to talk to Patriot fans in general, when you talk about the clutch gene, because it's what I hear all the time, Cam Newton's not clutch. And you're right. This year, he hasn't been clutch at all. When we've needed him to be clutch, he hasn't. Seattle, Buffalo, Denver, 100%. We're never going to get the clutch of Tom Brady ever again. No. You know what I mean? And I think that we need to lower our standards too, in the sense of guys are going to come out and they're going to throw interceptions to lose a game for us. Unlike, we always trusted Tom Brady not to do that. Because the best in the league do that. Aaron Rodgers has done that. Pretty boy Mahomes has done that. I think that we have to lower those expectations. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Stafford. I think he's a guy who could win this team. When it comes to the clutch gene, again, like, look, not everybody can be Kobe Bryant or Michael Jordan or Tom Brady or Patrick Mahomes, who are probably the two most clutch quarterbacks in the league right now. I don't count Aaron Rodgers as a clutch guy because throwing Hail Mary 70 yards down the field is not being clutch. That's being able to throw the ball really well and having receivers who can go up and catch it. There's nobody else. When you look at all the quarterbacks right now, if we went around every team and said, hey, who would you really, really want? There's only 2 or 3 that we'd really actually put on a list. You know what I mean? When you think about everybody else, would you really want Kyler Murray? You know what I mean? Would you really want Jared Goff? Do you really want Russell Wilson? Who, when you talk about the clutch gene, hasn't always been there. We've watched Seattle almost blow more games than they've won this year. So there's
Seattle's not like hanging by a thread, I feel like.
Say that again?
Seattle's like hanging on by a thread this year, I feel like.
No, yeah, they are. They are. Yeah. We talked about it every week. It's, you want Big Ben? No, right? There's only a couple of quarterbacks that kind of compare to what we've had to deal with. The Patriots aren't going to be going another 20-year run. I think that's what everybody needs to know. Good news is neither are the Buffalo Bills. They're a year away from having to break the bank on Josh Allen, who's probably going to get paid around $39.5 million, maybe a little bit more to get over that Russell Wilson thing. Well, guess what? When you pay that kind of money, you got to probably say bye to a John Brown or a Cole Beasley, and that weakens up the offense a little bit more. And the defense is going to have to take a knock. So the Patriots could be in the next 2 years back to competing. The only team that's going to be good for a really long time now is Miami because freaking Houston gives them all their draft picks, right? They're drafting 3rd overall this year. So that's an issue. That's an issue. I'm more scared of Miami in the next 2 years, and I'm scared of Buffalo this year. In my opinion, Buffalo's a top 3 team in the NFL this year. I'm more worried long-term, though, with Miami, who keeps getting younger because, they trade well, and you just find guys like Bill O'Brien that give up a 1st and a 2nd for an offensive lineman.
No, yeah, I totally agree with you. I think that Miami's going to be a team that's going to be tough for a while to look out for, but I think that the Patriots can be back there. They just need to pull the right plugs and make the right moves. And I think that we can all be, as frustrating as this season was, I think we can all be hopeful and optimistic that Belichick knows what he's doing and he can make the appropriate adjustments after he really looks at how this season went and he knows where the pieces are that are missing. So I think that we can all take that out of this season and just know that they will be back there. It's just a matter of making those adjustments.
Yeah, I can't argue with that, and I concur.
Yeah. Well, I definitely will not keep you all night. I know you have your big show coming up, so just remind people again how they can tune into your show.
Head on over to sportscaster.com/DPN_Ray, or you can simply go to sportscaster.com/Ray Rauth, RAYRAUTH. We go live, DPN commentary, me and Connor Carney, the guy that I discovered. We go on at 9 p.m. Eastern time tonight. We're there from Sunday to Thursday every day. You can also find me. I'm on like 4 different times on Sundays covering the NFL. For Sportscaster, we also do Monday Night Football, Thursday Night Football, which I don't have to do anymore, pregame show. So I guess I'll only be on Sunday doing the football for Sportscaster. Besides that, Sunday to Thursday, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. You can find us there.
Awesome. Yeah, I definitely appreciate you coming on, and everybody, you all know how to find Boston Bowling on all social media platforms, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. You can also find it on any podcast streaming platform, iHeartRadio, Apple, Spotify, or any other podcast streaming platform. And this episode will be up shortly too, so everybody can follow it that way. And I definitely really appreciate Ray being my guest tonight. I think a lot of people enjoyed this episode.
I appreciate you having me on. I had a blast. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. I hope you have a good rest of your night, and I will see you next Tuesday at my usual 7:30 p.m. time. Have a good night, everybody.